Last week we were doing some we did 2 weeks ago. We did question and answers, and we did not get through all of those.
Which is fantastic. It's fantastic to have that much feedback.
So that is what we are planning to do today, is finish that. We do encourage you guys to continue to feed those to us, so that we'd like to do a question and answer probably once a month, just so that we can make sure that we get through any of that if you guys do have questions. So do you want to start this out, John, or do you want me to go ahead?
Oh, go ahead, because I don't know where we are in the sheet.
So the first question that we did not get to last time was, how much water should we be drinking as a ketogenic person? So I will say that this is kind of a controversial subject, whether you're keto or whether you aren't. Some people tell you that you need 8-ounce glasses of water, and some people tell you that you don't. My personal opinion, and from what I have done through research, you need to drink when you're thirsty. That's pretty much there. I don't think that there is a standard. From all the research that I have done, all of the doctors out there who suggest the 8-ounce glasses is because that is kind of an average. So with anything, you have a guideline, but listen to your body. If you're thirsty, drink, and if you're not, don't force it. That's my own opinion.
Yeah, I've never had. I've done where I try to drink water, and it's just I always go back to the just drink when I'm thirsty. Yeah. That's all it seems to matter for me. So I don't really do anything specific for that.
Okay. The next question, has anyone found any research on impact with females going through menopause, either pre or post? So
I got nothing.
You got nothing. Okay.
I'm out.
So I also do not have any personal experience with it, but I've been pretty open with some of my medical conditions. So I do have polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is not the same as menopause, but it is female hormonal. And this way of eating does help with that. I have done some research, and although I do not think that there has been any medically proven research in this space, at least what I can find so far, there's been anecdotal. So most people do say that the symptoms of menopause are reduced. They don't have near as many night sweats, and most of the symptoms are shortened, or they are further duration between their episodes. So I will continue to do some research on this, because obviously I'm not getting younger by the days. So I will eventually need to know this for myself. So I will continue to do research on that. And I do try to post some of the discussions that we've had. Once I find some research, I do try to post it out on the website. So please go to our website continuously, because every day I do try to post something out there new. So hopefully that answers your question about that.
All right. Yeah. The next one was suggestions for doctors who have a more healthier approach to living, i.e. don't push the pain meds, more holistic, and maybe even support a ketogenic lifestyle. And I actually don't know of any doctors. I know acquaintance, usually chiropractors, that definitely follow primal living or have more of a lifestyle that would be paleo. But I think you mentioned that your chiropractor is practicing.
He does ketogenic himself. Also my primary physician, although he doesn't prescribe it, he is a supporter of it and has done it himself. But there actually is a web, and I'm going to give a shout out to Jimmy Moore. He, on his website, he actually has a link to, we'll send in, he's actually worldwide. So I have looked through there. Unfortunately, most of us listening to this or part of this discussion are from Illinois. Not a lot, and there is no one in the Peoria area. However, there are some north Chicago area. There's several, and there's a lot in other states. So I think that just shows that we're a little bit behind time. So go out and talk to your physician, tell them to do research and get on board with us. The next one is about stomach ulcers. So I will apologize up front. I have tried to do some research on this and have not been very successful. So the question is, has anyone found anything on impact to stomach ulcers? Does it help? I have found very little. I've reached out to a couple of people who are in the ketogenic community, and they were unaware of any research. I do have a couple of emails out to some of the doctors in the ketogenic community as well to see if they know of any research or if they have any experience in their offices with that. But I do apologize. I really don't have anything for this one today, but I will continue to work on that for you.
So, stomach ulcers, in your research, were you able to find what causes those? I mean, is it a result of like leaky gut?
So surprisingly, I did listen to a recent podcast, and the doctor that was on there is a believer that ulcers are actually caused by bacteria. So his piece was if we had probiotics, that it would help with that. But he did not cite any research. I don't know if that is his own personal belief, if it is anecdotal from his practice. So I really wanted to do a little bit more research in that space just to see what others were feeling about that. Yeah,
because the controversy is around if it's your stomach acid taking over, and if when it comes down to the stomach acid, this eating style would not impact your. I mean, it is not like an acidic diet, so it's not like it's not going to impact it in that way. But the problem is there's so many other, contributing factors that you can't really tell for sure.
Yeah. So I want to pause quick and just ask if anybody has any questions on the phone. You can unmute your phones by punching *6. So we want to give you guys a chance to ask any questions about anything that we've discussed so far. Okay.
Or submitting a question too that you didn't have to do ahead of time. If you have one, you can just speak up at any time.
Okay, the next one are, what are the most common mistakes people make when going ketogenic? So, this one I could probably talk the whole, and not because people make a lot of mistakes, but it's going to generate a lot more conversation, I think. But I'll try to keep it to a minimum just so that we can get through the other couple of questions. But break in if you guys have any comments, questions, or... So the number one thing that I have seen is thinking this is a diet. So you lose weight and then you want to go back to the SAD diet or the standard American. So I will tell you that if you eat this way and then you go back to eating the standard American diet, you're probably going to gain weight. It's not any different than any other diet. If you start Weight Watchers and then you quit and you go back to eating donuts and cookies, you're probably going to gain the weight back. But this is not a quick fix. It is not something that you're going to do for a week and then be healthy and never have to think about eating this way again. This is a lifestyle change, and I recommend that when you do it, you commit, and then you this just becomes your new way of life. So,
and I think you can run into some tummy troubles too. If you go back to the old way of eating.
Absolutely.
And just feel really bad immediately, and you know that was a mistake. And it's easier to go back to the keto again.
Yeah.
I mean, that cheat meal or that free day doesn't become something you look forward to anymore because you don't need it and you know how bad you feel afterwards. So.
Yeah. And that actually is great feedback, Denise. That's something that people who have come to me, and that was, I was at a birthday party and I wanted to have cake, and so I did. Okay, and everybody has that choice. We're all free to make that choice. Just understand that when you make that choice, that there are consequences that come with it.
Yes.
And then they would come back and say, oh my gosh, that was horrible. I felt terrible. I didn't enjoy the rest of the party. My stomach hurt. I had bathroom issues, whatever it was. And so, although for me, I'm an all or nothing kind of person, but if you are someone who is the 80-20, like John has pointed out numerous times, if you choose to do that, that's great. But most people who are that way decide that it's not worth the cheat. So they'll find some other thing that they can do because how they feel just isn't worth. And then it takes you a while to get back in.
Yes.
So it can kick you out of ketosis. And once it does, it can take you, 3 days to get back in. So you just have to weigh, is that piece of cake worth doing all of that? One of the other things that is a big mistake is that people consume too much protein. So a person's body only needs so much protein, and we've discussed this a little bit before in some of our other discussions, but from the research that I have done, generally a woman needs up to 75 grams of protein a day, and a man would need up to 120 grams. So men are between 100 and 120, and women are between 50 and 75. This, again, is something that's very personal, and you need to individualize it to you. So those are guidelines to start with. I started out pretty low. I'm short, so I'm only 5'3". I started out at like 52 grams of protein, and after a couple of weeks, I was feeling that my thighs felt very weird. I won't say weak, but I have pretty, and just reached the community and just was trying to, get a feel for. One recommendation, as soon as I did, I put it up to about 62 grams, and that feeling went away. So you truly do need to listen. It's said times, but your body is a miraculous machine, and it is going to tell you when it needs something. So do not ignore those signs. And got anything to add to the protein, John?
No, not really, but I think you kind of hit on it. But just to drill that point in, is your activity level, especially if you're, I always jump to an example of running a marathon. If you are outlaying that much energy, and we even had a question on that in one of the first sessions. You do need to be careful, because the protein and your carbs may need to flux, like you said, listening to your body, because you could find that it could impact your recovery too. So, but I totally agree.
Okay. Thinking that this is an overnight fix, again, kind of touched on that with the first point. Some people are more damaged than others. Most of the people that I have helped get going with this, some of them are really mad that they didn't lose a ton of weight up front. And to be honest, rejoice in that. Because if you don't, that means you are not as damaged as the next person. If you are losing a large amount of weight in that first week or two, it is because you have a lot of inflammation and a lot of water weight. If you don't lose that huge, you basically are just starting out where everybody ends up, right? So you don't have all of the damage that you have to repair up front. It's not a bad thing. This is a journey all on your own. But it is not a quick fix. It's not an overnight fix. You did not damage your body overnight, and you're not going to fix it overnight. So that's one of the things that you really have to think about, is that it is a commitment, right? Another thing that is a huge, huge mistake, and this one I really want to drive the point very heavy, mistaking a low-carb and a gluten-free diet for ketogenic. They are not the same. Although ketogenic is gluten-free is not ketogenic. So ingredients do matter,
Yeah.
Which is the difference between most low-carb and your ketogenic. So just going and finding a food on the shelf that says low carb or gluten free, you really do need to read all of those ingredients, because that it does not equal ketogenic.
Are you going to make fun of my mayonnaise? You should make
I
fun.
might. Yeah. So John was thinking that he was doing something great buying this store-bought mayonnaise.
Well, I was saying that my mayonnaise isn't that bad. She was talking about how she makes her own mayonnaise. And I said, well, I buy like the, avocado oil, fancy, gluten-free, blah, blah, everything nice. And she replied right away. It says, well, that has honey in it. I'm like, no, it doesn't. Sure enough, man, we went and found the label and it does have honey in it. So I had to eat a little crow on that one. Honey and mayonnaise. Who
It's
would have guessed?
organic, but
It was organic. It was the organic honey. I'll grant you that.
Yeah. So I mean, and that does prove a point, right? So we went over oils a couple weeks ago. Avocado oil is a great oil to use. So all of the ingredients that were in it were great until you got to the honey. And even though it says 0 carbs, I would like to put on the agenda for next week is to kind of go over how people hide things or not next week, next month, how people hide things in your ingredient label. But this one is a perfect example. It said 0 carbs. Well, there's honey in it, which means that's not 0 carbs. Mm-hmm. But because of the way the laws are written on how they have to report that on your food label, they legally can say there's 0 carbs in it, even though there's honey. So read the labels. I can't stress it enough. Read. And make your own, John.
Yeah.
I keep mine about 2 weeks. So if you ask somebody who is in the restaurant industry, they will tell you 5 to 7 days. But if you're at home, you've made it, smell it. Yeah. I mean, that's what I do with everything, right? Okay. If it doesn't smell bad, I'm going to eat it. But I do keep mine 2 weeks. Okay. And it's easy. The recipe is out on the website. It is super simple to make. It takes about 30 seconds. Buy an immersion blender. It's worth every penny. And you can get them fairly cheap.
That's the other thing we're arguing about. I said I am not buying another kitchen gadget, and she said just buy an immersion blender. And I was like, I got so much kitchen crap.
That to me is foreign because if you walked in my kitchen, first of all, I have a very large kitchen, and I have almost every single kitchen gadget that has ever been made. So I just find that hard that you don't have one.
Do you have the bacon tree as seen on TV? Oh
I do.
God. Wow, that's impressive.
I do not use it, but I do have it. I have probably 3 very large drawers full of gadgets. And many of them, I'll be honest, I don't use, but I may. So
One day you might use
I might use it.
Well, I cleaned my kitchen stuff. My kitchen's bare bones now. I only keep things.
I need
that's
to
why
go through the minimalist.
That's why I'm going to bring you my grinder.
Yeah.
Okay. So skip carb cycling. We'll talk about that next week.
Okay. The next question was, can I eat too much?
Much water.
So you want to eat enough fat to stay satisfied, but if you go past that point, then you've eaten too much. So again, it all comes back to listen to your body. The next one.
But just a few things on that. Well, we talked, it's been, I don't know how many weeks, but we talked about being mindful of your eating and how sometimes you can eat that's like mindless. And a great example is you made some, what were they? Puppy chow stuff that was ketogenic. And my response when I tried it was, I could literally eat the entire batch of this just sitting in front of the TV. So you do need to be aware that especially when you're having or consuming more fat, you are in essence, or it's very easy to consume more calories. So her answer of yes is really important, but you also need to be very aware of when you're doing your mindless eating, because as Americans, we tend to do that in front of TV a lot. And making some rules for yourself that you will divide it into bags, or like any of the other tips and tricks that we'll probably be talking about in 2 weeks. But just be aware that it could be worse to do mindless eating on a ketogenic diet.
Yeah. Which, and that actually goes back to a couple weeks ago that we talked about eat when you're hungry, right? If you aren't hungry, your body naturally will go into intermittent fasting. Most of it is when you're sleeping, obviously. But just because the clock says it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and that's when we typically, as Americans, think we need to eat, you don't. I mean, there is nothing that says that that clock is what dictates when you eat. So it goes along with snacking. I'm not a big proponent for snacking. I do have, occasionally, I'll make things like the puppy chow, but I do control it. My husband's going to kill me if he listens to this podcast because I'm telling on him. But my husband is one of those who, he does that, right? He just, if he likes something, he's just going to eat it. So when I make those things, I know that about him. So I do the dividing for him because I'm not certain, even at this point of doing this, that he would be able to have that kind of self-control that he would divide it and let it go. So I made them, I gave him a portion, and I put the rest away. But you have to know that about yourself, right? If you are one of those people that you cannot do that, make a smaller batch or don't make them. But just eat when you're hungry and not, just because it's there or because the clock tells you to.
That clock tells you to is, we could do an entire thing about intermittent fasting, and I like that you said you kind of automatically do it. That's listening to your body. It's amazing when you wake up in the morning, if you just have a big glass of water, how you wouldn't say it's not that you're not hungry, but how you can go plenty of hours without really thinking about it.
Yeah. And to be honest, I was busy this morning, and
oh yeah,
I forgot to eat.
She walked into the room at 11 o'clock and said, I forgot to have my breakfast.
and I, quite honestly, I thought that I was hungry, but I ate a few bites of it and I feel fine now. So I don't think I was as hungry as I thought I was when I got down here, but
I think that probably leads you into how you can tell if you're in ketosis, doesn't it?
It does. So there are a few signs, and everybody wants to know. People go by those urine strips, and we've had some conversation about those as well. But there are ways that you can tell for free. So the first thing is your breath is going to smell, and people describe it as fruity. I think it's just bad breath. I don't know. I've never really smelt that fruity portion of it, but you might want to ask your spouse if your breath is smelling a little weird, because they'll probably be honest with you. Your coworkers probably will not be, but your spouse probably will. Some people describe it as dragon breath. I never really, it wasn't so horrible. It's not like morning breath when you get up and you're about to knock somebody down, but I didn't smell it to be fruity either. So it just smells off to me. It's just a different smell.
See, I don't notice. But
I don't anymore, and it will only happen in the beginning because once your body becomes actually fat adapt and you're using those ketones more, the acetone in your breath isn't as potent. So the bad breath portion kind of goes away. That really is like early on. Another way that you can tell early on is that your urine starts smelling weird, and they again describe it as fruity. I don't know what fruit smells like that, but I don't smell fruit there either. But it does smell different. To tell whether and there's a difference between ketosis and fat adapt. So how you can tell that you're fat adapt versus just being in ketosis is that you are able to go longer periods of time without food, and you don't feel hungry. So normally, if you sleep 8 hours and you get up and you're starving in the morning, you're probably not fat adapt. If you get up and you drink your water or your coffee here, 10 o'clock, and you ate dinner at 5, you're probably fat adapt if you're going that many hours without food. And people who do extended fasting are obviously most of them are fat adapt. I won't say everybody who fasts are fat adapt, but it does make it a little simpler when you're fat adapt to do longer periods of fasting.
So what about feeling it? Because I know, I've heard, I think maybe even, I don't know, I'm looking at the you feel it?
I I do. Quite honestly, it kind of goes back to the feeling of the clear brain and
the clarity.
So it's something that until you experience it, you can't really describe it to somebody. I mean, I said before I have medicine head, and I don't know what the and how to describe it. But when I'm out of ketosis, I actually, like physically, I just feel different, and I can't really describe that. But it is definitely different.
All right. Is that the end of our list?
It is the end of our list.
Oh, that's fantastic. We got through all the questions. That's great.
Does anyone in the room have any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm new and was wanting to find out, I'm type 2 diabetic. So
Okay.
how does this play into that? I mean, is that
It's
something that
wonderful.
needs to be? Okay.
So I used to be type 2. And full disclosure, I've only been ketogenic for almost a year now. But I was doing low carb prior, and I have reversed my type 2 diabetes. There are many people who go on this and in a very short amount of time either reduce their medicine, not on their own, or they are taken off of it. So what my recommendation would be is
You mean your
absolutely,
insulin? Reduce your insulin?
Reduce the medication. So
Okay, so
like
because
metformin.
there's two things that you right. Okay.
Yeah.
So can you talk about the differences between that and insulin? Just so everybody
so
kind of has an understanding.
Insulin, like do you mean people who have to inject insulin?
Correct. So
Okay.
there's a lot of type 2 diabetes. So depending on, so my ex-wife was diabetic, so she had juvenile diabetes. So I'm like,
Okay, so
way
she was
too-
type 1.
she was type
She
1.
was type 1.
Yeah. So she was required to take insulin because her body produced
Correct.
none. And then there's different phases for type 2,
Correct.
which is adult onset. And there are some that still supplement with taking insulin with needles. And that's why you need to make sure you're talking with your doctor
Yeah.
because
So I will be fully transparent. I do not dabble in type 1 diabetics. That's well out of anything that I personally have experience with or that I have enough research behind me to help with. If you are a type 2 who is doing the ketogenic, regardless if you're doing insulin or you aren't, I recommend that you stay very close contact with your doctor. This way of eating stabilizes your insulin so quickly that it will impact the dosage that you are taking. So the fear is that if you are on something like metformin, which is not the insulin, your glucose stabilizes, which means then by you taking the medication could drop yours, and so your fasting blood sugar very well could be in the 40s and 50s. So I truly do recommend, if you are on medication, that you work very closely with your doctor, just because you don't want a hypoglycemic episode due to your insulin coming down because of your eating, and then you're supplementing with those drugs. The difference between is that if you have, and I could be wrong on this, so I'm going to preface this with I'm not an expert in this space, but I did have type 2. My mother and my father both had type 2. So from my understanding is that if your type 2 gets bad enough or goes untreated for long enough, that it damages you so much that your body can't produce enough insulin. Not that it stops like a type 1, but that it cannot produce enough insulin, so you have to supplement with the injection of insulin.
yeah, that's correct.
Which is very different from a straight type 2 who just does something like metformin. So, I mean, yes, this diet is very, very good for people. And in fact, I have a link out on our website. Dr. Finney has just started a new company, and he and his colleagues are on a mission to cure 1 million people of type 2 diabetes. So, and they are doing it with the ketogenic diet. So, it is very hopeful. it reduces the inflammation in your body, which actually then helps with other things if you have other medical conditions as well. So.
Yeah, and just a side note, the fact that they use the cure verb or noun, whatever would be a verb, is actually means that they have to do a whole bunch of things to prove that, so it's actually a big deal that they're actually doing that. So it'll be an interesting study to see when that comes out, because that's a bold statement to say that in this day and age when people are so lawsuit happy.
That's controversial too, right?
Yep.
I mean, people say that you cannot cure type 2 diabetes. Other people say you can, because it is directly impacted by the foods that we eat.
Right.
So, I mean, regardless of what phrase you put on it, if you are no longer type 2, I mean, for me, I don't care if it's cured or whether it's reversed or what you want to call it. It's not there, and I don't have to take medicine. So,
just
right,
fantastic,
yeah.
Right? Well, is there, just real fast, anybody have any other questions? We only have 5 more minutes, so. Okay.
Anybody on the phone?
So
Star 6?
*6 on the phone. So while anyone's building up the courage to ask, I'll go ahead and talk about a few housekeeping items. So I mentioned it at the very beginning of the call. Ketonian Korner is now on iTunes. If you search for it, you'll find it. You don't have to just use the link. The Facebook, it's non-related. It's more for if you want to share personal information and you don't want to do it in a work setting. It's a safe place. You can post it also if you'd like. More about mistakes. So we skipped over one revolving around carb cycling. There's a couple of different strategies, but they're very heavy related to fitness that we'll talk about. So if you have any questions revolving around health and fitness pieces and aspects and how you can control your diet with that, we're going to do a little bit more of a deep dive. So any questions revolving around that, feel free to reach out to us. So, what did I miss?
Well, I had challenged John a couple of weeks ago and forgot to ask.
Oh, yeah.
So I challenged him to eat some butter because he said that he's never just eaten butter.
This is a true statement. So have it? Okay. So I did say that butter. Take the spoon and eat it. It was all right. It was okay. I mean, I told her, I was like, I wouldn't call it a staple in my diet by any means. And she said I just need to eat it more. You know what you told me? I should just eat it more.
Yeah.
So
practice it.
Practice? Well, I decided that's not something I'm going to add to my things I practice. So, but it wasn't bad by any means.
Is it soft, or do you keep it in the refrigerator where it's hard?
I keep it on the
counter.
On the counter.
See, I'm not. Yeah. So I think you should put a little bit in the refrigerator.
So you didn't give me all these rules when we started.
Well, because I thought you were just like me and kept it in the refrigerator.
Oh, of course. No, I like it soft spreadable. I want it to melt on my vegetables. I don't want it to sit there as a brick that slides to the side.
Yeah, I do too. But if you're quick and you're just a little hungry and you don't really want any protein and you
hard-boiled
don't
egg,
carbs, just slice off a piece of butter and eat a piece of cold butter.
Yeah,
it's great.
I just do hard-boiled eggs. That's my go-to for just a little something. That or an entire avocado.
Well, that too.
Which is not really much of a.
Except all
just
mine
a
are
little.
hard right now. I bought a bag and none of them are right.
Yeah, I hate that. That's like third world.
All right.
And
Fridge.
Yeah, I was going to say, the tip for that is if you don't want them to all ripen at the same time, throw them in the refrigerator. It will slow them from ripening. So
they're not as good.
They aren't.
John's opinion.
Yeah, I like them
good.
more. My husband likes them cold. So, yeah.
Personal preferences.
Yeah. So I do have something that I want to update. I think we talked about it last week about MTC oil.
Oh, yeah.
So John does MTC oil, and I have finally given in. John and I talked about it, and I was getting intrigued by it. And then I listened to a podcast, and after that, I decided to buy some. So I'm still not ready to say I am in full support of it, but I did start it on Saturday, and I can tell you that I'm pretty impressed with how it makes me feel. So mental clarity is there, being in ketosis anyway, but the sharpness and the focus now is I mean, within the first day, I noticed that difference. So I'm willing to say that I'm doing an N1 experiment for the next 30 days. So I will report each week on how it's making me feel. It is supposed to make your ketones higher. I'll be testing those once a week, which I do anyway. So we'll see if that makes a difference. And it is also supposed to help you drop pounds on the scale, which everyone knows how I feel about that. But I am weighing and keeping record of that too. So
You said a month,
I'm going to do it for 30 days.
and you decided that you're doing 2.
So
What
I
did you decide? You
started out at a teaspoon because everyone that I had reached out to warned me about
Go
some
slow.
bad experiences that you can have.
Mhm.
Even though I have been doing coconut oil, a tablespoon at least every morning in my coffee for more than a year, they still warned that this was a little bit different. So I started out with a teaspoon. I today have worked up to 2.5. So tomorrow, which I felt fine today, so no intestinal issues. So tomorrow I'll be up to a full tablespoon. So we'll see.
What is MTC oil?
It's a processed oil. So and if you look back on the recording and you listen to our good fat, bad fat, our generic thing was, stay away from processed stuff. So
Well, it's processed in the fact that it's coconut oil that they reduce down to isolate the medium chain triglycerides versus having the long chain and the medium chain.
Correct.
Right?
Mhm.
So it's not processed in the thought of like taking corn and processing it into an oil. It is coconut oil. They just separate long chain and medium chain triglycerides out of it, and you're left. MTC is medium chain triglycerides. So you're left with what is it? C8, C10, and C12.
yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, but basically the bottom line is the reason why they do that is that your body can more easily convert that into ketones without breaking it down. So it's more of if you could call it quick energy revolving around fat, it would be MTC oil.
So are you?
Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to ask. So, are you mixing it with something, or are you just taking a tablespoon?
So I do mix it because I'm not that brave.
Okay.
In my coffee every morning, I put 2 tablespoons of butter, a little bit of stevia that is toffee flavored, and I put MTC oil. I was putting coconut oil. John, however, is a brave soul, and he eats it on vegetables.
Yeah, I'll pour it on vegetables. I've poured it on steak before. I'll get criticized for saying this, but I even poured it on sushi once.
Well, and some people just take it as a shot. I tried that with coconut oil early on, and that experience was not that great, so I'm not that brave.
Oh, my son will eat it. He'll put his finger right in the coconut oil and suck it off.
Yeah. See, and I'm not a fan of coconut flavor either, so I think that was some of it. I do pulling though, so any of you who don't know what that is, oil in your mouth, and you swoosh it between your teeth like mouthwash, and it helps kill bacteria between your teeth and gums, and it improves.
Well, more A versus C6 side, so I tend to buy either on it or bulletproof.
Yeah, and to be honest, I wasn't sure that
You can get them all online. Everything's online. But I mean, they even sell it at
I wasn't sure if
Costco.
I was gonna like it, so I just went cheap.
Right.
So whatever was cheap on Amazon, that's what made my decision. At the end of 30 days, if I am a believer and convinced that this is something I'm going to continue, I will. And I mean, this may be perfectly fine. I don't know. I haven't showed it to John yet, and he is more of the expert in that space than me. But
I wouldn't call it an expert, but I do think that
compared to me, I'll call him the expert because I know nothing really about it. So.
So if you lower the bar enough, you too can be an expert. All right. So speaking of which, we got to wrap it up. So I appreciate everybody calling in. And again, if you have any ideas for topics, and I should layer one thing on top. If you would like to help present one of these, we're always looking for people to participate. That's the great thing about a small group, is we are learning from each other. So feel free to reach out to either one of us. And if you have any questions, you can also post in the Connections community or Facebook group. So,
Great. Thanks,
all
Jim.
right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
And see you next week.